WS cheated on me with my ex-best friend, now I feel obligated to reconciliation for the sake of WS? It's a long story, I'm sorry but I'm desperate and I don't know what to do. It's been 4 months since D-Day. My 32M wife, 29F, started being distant in November last year. Everything irritated her and she always got emotional with me. One moment she loved me and then out of nowhere she hated me. We stopped having sex in mid-October and when I wanted to start she would get in a bad mood. I tried to understand what was happening but every time she was distant, I talked to her family and friends and no one knew why she acted like that. This was the first time in 8 years 5 married she acted like this. So I only focused on the work that always increases at the end of the year. The holidays passed and she was still very distant but this time she stopped being irritated and became depressed. I told her that we are going to the doctor or the psychologist to see what was happening to her. She had been laid off in August 2023 and since then she has been looking for a job while I covered both of our expenses, so I thought that might be it. She didn't want to go to the doctor or the psychologist. She got very nervous and told me that she was only like this because she still couldn't find a job and she felt like a burden to me. She hugged me, asked for forgiveness and thanked me while crying. I didn't understand why she told me that. It was the first show of affection I had from her in months. I usually take our vehicles to the car wash the first week of the month, so when I took hers in, first checking for anything valuable before putting them in, I found a box of abortion pills. At that moment my world fell apart. I had a lot of questions, so I started remembering her behaviors and the time that had passed. My mind was telling me that she had cheated on me, got pregnant and had a recent abortion. That right at the end of October she started to be distant and irritated with me, and suddenly at the end of the year holidays she became depressed. The dates coincided so that she could abort before 8 to 9 weeks. I came home and she asked me if something was wrong. Now I was acting distant. I told her nothing and just ignored her. I didn't want her to suspect what I had discovered. Now I was mentally destroyed so I spoke to my boss, asked for leave for a couple of weeks and started investigating. This is where my ex-best friend, AP, 35M, comes into the equation. He works on projects in an oil company. He usually works 8 to 9 months and is free 3 to 4. I talked to a couple of trusted neighbors if they had noticed anything strange in the last few months at my house or if they had seen someone come in, and they told me that they had only seen relatives of my wife, her friends, and my friend. One of them has a surveillance camera and gave me access to his recordings. That's when I started to distrust him. My ex-best friend, AP, had been released in October and he used to come to my house often to play video games and watch sports with me. So the fact that he came to my house when my wife was alone and neither of them had ever told me about it made me want to off myself just thinking that they were having an affair. So I tried to search my wife's cell phone but she had changed the password. We knew our password since when we got married. So I took her laptop and waited for her to connect to WhatsApp to sync and view the chats. That's when I discovered everything. I took screenshots and sent them to my email. When reading them I found out that they had started an EA since January 2023, and it became PA on October 25, 2023. It hurt me a lot. I was disappointed. January 9, 2024 was D-Day. I remember talking to my ex-best friend, AP, about how distant WS had become and he just downplayed it and always said she would get over it. Remembering how he blatantly lied to my face makes me angry. I printed the chats and confronted WS. She just broke down and asked me for forgiveness, because she didn't know why she had done it. I left the house and went straight to tell her family everything. They were devastated and in disbelief so they confronted her and she confessed everything to them. Later I told our friends and many of them told me that they had suspected something but had no proof and since my ex-best friend, AP, was very close they didn't take it seriously. I finally confronted AP. He denied it, so I threw the printed chats in his face. He remained silent. I told him not to come near my house and I had already told all our friends that WS had confessed to me and that I knew everything. WS's parents took her home, apologized to me and were embarrassed. WS called me every day. She wanted to talk to me but I refused. I started the divorce and when she was notified she tried to off herself by taking pills. Her family took her to the hospital on time. AP, ex-best friend, went to see her, and I don't know what they talked about, but after leaving the hospital he got drunk and had a serious car accident. 2 days later he had brain death. His brother called me and asked me to tell him what had happened. Then he called me again and told me that I was not welcome at his brother's funeral, that the family was ashamed of what he had done to me but they didn't want to see me because they somehow blamed me for his death. That hurt me a lot, but I understood it. WS called me again when she left the hospital and this time I talked to her. She asked me to come back, she asked me for forgiveness and that she regretted what she had done. She felt guilty for AP's death. If she didn't come back to me, she was going to try to off herself again. My mother died in the pandemic and she was the only person in quarantine who supported me. She helped me with my depression for 2 years and my cigarette addiction that I had after my mother died. I felt like I owed it to her, so I took her back, but we both had to go to IC and then MC. In a week we will start MC, but honestly my confidence is broken, my mind is destroyed, and I live with the regret that my ex-best friend would still be alive if I had dealt with their affair differently. IC says that I really miss AP, ex-best friend, and at the same time I hold a grudge towards him because I feel like he didn't pay for what he did to me. He told me that it will be difficult to trust WS again if I don't put that feeling aside. At this moment I don't know what to do with my life. I feel tied to an R that I don't want because WS reminds me of my ex-best friend, AP, but I feel guilty that WS supported me at my lowest moment. I feel like I owe it to her.